What the hell is your delay, Captain?
We're waiting, sir.
Waiting for what?
Private Doss.
Who the hell is Private Doss?
I was dreaming about being a doctor, but I can't stay here while all them go fight for me.
Hacksaw Ridge is one of those rare war films that doesn't just depict violence and heroism, but deeply interrogates what courage actually means. Released in 2016 and directed by Mel Gibson, the film centers on an extraordinary true story that almost feels too improbable to be real, yet every major element of it is grounded in history. At the heart of it is Desmond Doss, portrayed with striking sincerity by Andrew Garfield, a man who enters one of the most brutal theaters of World War II not to take lives, but to save them, all while refusing to carry a weapon. This alone sets the tone for a story that challenges conventional expectations of war cinema and forces the viewer to reconsider the nature of bravery. From the outset, the narrative establishes Doss as someone shaped by deeply held convictions. Growing up in a modest household, he is influenced by a strict moral upbringing, rooted in faith and a strong adherence to the commandment against killing. This belief is not portrayed as passive or naive. Rather, it is shown as something forged through personal struggle and reflection. The film carefully builds this foundation so that when Doss later refuses to bear arms, it doesn't feel like a gimmick or a narrative twist. It feels inevitable. His stance isn't born out of fear or cowardice, but from a disciplined moral framework that he refuses to compromise, even under immense pressure. As the story transitions into his enlistment, the tone shifts dramatically. The military environment is depicted with a raw, almost suffocating intensity. Training sequences are not merely procedural, they are confrontational. Doss becomes an immediate outsider among his fellow soldiers, many of whom see his refusal to carry a rifle as a betrayal of their shared mission. This tension is not understated. He is ridiculed, harassed, and even physically assaulted by those who are supposed to stand beside him in combat. The film doesn't shy away from portraying how deeply ingrained the expectation of violence is within a wartime context. For many of the men around him, the idea of a soldier without a weapon is not just unusual, it is incomprehensible. What makes these sequences particularly compelling is how Doss responds. He does not lash out or attempt to impose his beliefs on others. Instead, he absorbs the hostility with a quiet resilience that gradually becomes one of the film's defining traits. His determination to serve as a medic allows him to reconcile his desire to help with his refusal to harm. It's a compromise that satisfies his conscience, but does little to ease the skepticism of his superiors. Authority figures in the film, including those portrayed by Sam Worthington and Vince Vaughn, embody the institutional rigidity of the military. They initially see Doss as a liability, someone who could endanger others by refusing to engage in combat in the conventional sense. The legal and ethical conflict that emerges is one of the most fascinating aspects of the narrative. Doss's insistence on remaining true to his beliefs leads to a court-martial scenario that underscores the tension between individual conscience and collective duty. The film frames this not as a simple battle of right versus wrong, but as a complex negotiation between personal integrity and institutional necessity. When Doss ultimately secures the right to serve without carrying a weapon, it feels less like a victory and more like the beginning of an even greater test. The battlefield will be the ultimate proving ground for whether his convictions can coexist with the brutal realities of war. Once the story reaches Okinawa, the film undergoes another transformation. The tone becomes darker, heavier, and far more visceral. The Battle of Hacksaw Ridge is depicted with an unflinching realism that is both gripping and deeply unsettling. The cinematography, sound design, and pacing all work together to create a sense of chaos and immediacy. Explosions tear through the landscape, bullets cut through the air with relentless precision, and the sheer scale of destruction becomes overwhelming. This is not a sanitized version of war. It is presented as a relentless, grinding ordeal that pushes every soldier to their limits. In this environment, Doss's role as a medic takes on a profound significance. While others are focused on advancing positions and neutralizing threats, he moves through the battlefield with a singular purpose: to save as many lives as possible. The contrast is striking. Amid the noise and fury of combat, his actions are almost meditative in their focus. He tends to the wounded under fire, drags soldiers to safety, and repeatedly risks his life without any means of defending himself. This is where the central thesis becomes fully realized. Courage, it suggests, is not defined by one's ability to inflict harm, but by the willingness to endure danger for the sake of others. The sequence in which Doss remains on the ridge after his unit retreats is particularly powerful. Night falls, and the battlefield becomes eerily quiet, punctuated only by the groans of the wounded and the distant sounds of enemy movement. One by one, he locates injured soldiers and lowers them down the cliff using a rope, all while whispering a simple prayer: "Please, Lord, help me get one more." This repetition becomes almost hypnotic, a mantra that encapsulates his relentless commitment. The number of men he saves, 75, is staggering, but the film doesn't present it as a statistic. Instead, it emphasizes the individual acts of bravery that make up that total, each one a small victory against the overwhelming tide of destruction. Andrew Garfield's performance is central to making all of this believable. He portrays Doss not as a saint or an untouchable hero, but as a deeply human figure. There are moments of fear, doubt, and physical exhaustion that ground the character in reality. His vulnerability makes his actions all the more impactful. He is not immune to the horrors around him. He simply chooses to act in spite of them. This nuanced portrayal prevents the character from becoming one-dimensional and allows the audience to connect with him on a deeper level. The supporting cast also plays a crucial role in shaping the narrative. Sam Worthington's character undergoes a gradual transformation, moving from skepticism to respect as he witnesses Doss's actions firsthand. Vince Vaughn brings a surprising depth to his role, balancing moments of humor with a growing recognition of Doss's value. Hugo Weaving and Rachel Griffiths, as Doss's parents, provide emotional context that enriches the story, particularly in illustrating the origins of his beliefs. Teresa Palmer's role adds a layer of emotional grounding, offering a glimpse of what Doss is fighting for beyond the battlefield. One of the most compelling aspects of the film is how it redefines the concept of heroism. In many war films, heroism is tied to acts of aggression, charging into battle, taking down enemies, achieving strategic victories. Hacksaw Ridge flips this paradigm. Doss's heroism is rooted in compassion, restraint, and an unwavering commitment to his principles. This doesn't diminish the bravery of other soldiers, rather it expands the definition to include forms of courage that are often overlooked. The film suggests that there is room for multiple kinds of heroism, and that moral conviction can be just as powerful as physical strength. The film's direction by Mel Gibson is also worth noting. Known for his ability to depict intense, often brutal narratives, Gibson brings a distinct style to the project. The battle sequences are meticulously crafted, combining practical effects with dynamic camera work to create a sense of immersion. At the same time, he allows quieter moments to breathe, giving the audience time to process the emotional weight of what they are witnessing. This balance between spectacle and introspection is one of the film's greatest strengths. Another layer of the story lies in its exploration of faith. Doss's beliefs are not presented as abstract or detached from reality. They are tested repeatedly, both in the training camp and on the battlefield. The film doesn't demand that the audience share his faith, but it does ask them to respect its role in shaping his actions. His reliance on prayer, particularly during the rescue sequences, is depicted as a source of strength rather than a sign of weakness. This adds a spiritual dimension to the narrative that complements its physical and emotional intensity. The historical context of the film further enhances its impact. World War II is often portrayed through the lens of large-scale strategy and geopolitical significance, but Hacksaw Ridge narrows its focus to the experiences of individuals. By doing so, it humanizes a conflict that can sometimes feel distant or abstract. The Battle of Okinawa, one of the bloodiest engagements of the war, serves as a backdrop that underscores the stakes involved. Within this chaos, Doss's actions stand out not just as acts of bravery, but as a testament to the possibility of maintaining one's humanity in the face of overwhelming violence. As the story moves toward its conclusion, the recognition of Doss's actions feels both earned and inevitable. His fellow soldiers, once dismissive and hostile, come to see him as indispensable. The respect he gains is not the result of a single moment, but of consistent, selfless action. When he is awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor, it serves as a formal acknowledgement of what the audience has already witnessed. It is a moment that carries significant weight, not because of the medal itself, but because of what it represents, a validation of his beliefs and the impact of his actions. What lingers after the film ends is not just the spectacle of the battle or the scale of heroism, but the questions it raises. What does it mean to stand by one's principles in the face of overwhelming opposition? Can nonviolence have a place in a context defined by violence? Hacksaw Ridge doesn't offer simple answers, but it presents a compelling case through the story of Desmond Doss. It challenges viewers to think beyond conventional definitions of strength and to consider the power of conviction, empathy, and resilience. In the broader landscape of war films, Hacksaw Ridge occupies a unique position. It delivers the intensity and realism that audiences expect from the genre, but it also introduces a perspective that is rarely explored. By focusing on a conscientious objector who refuses to compromise his beliefs, it adds a new dimension to the portrayal of wartime experiences. It reminds us that even in the darkest circumstances, there are individuals who choose a different path, one defined not by destruction, but by preservation. Ultimately, the film is as much about identity as it is about conflict. Doss's journey is one of self-definition, of holding on to a sense of self in an environment that constantly pressures him to change. His story resonates because it is not confined to a specific time or place. The idea of standing firm in one's beliefs, even when it comes at a personal cost, is universally relevant. Hacksaw Ridge captures this idea with clarity and emotional depth, making it not just a war film, but a deeply human story that continues to resonate long after the final scene fades.